So I'm currently recording this video on August 24, 2022. And on this day, 3 years ago, August 24, 2019, the Cassette Comeback YouTube channel took a look at one of these SMAT cassettes from this same generation. This SMAT SD is from 2001, and Cassette Comeback looked at a different Type 1 cassette. It's also Type 1, just like this SD, but it's a different model from the same year. It's called the SMAT SK. Now, there are three different kinds of SMAT Type 1s from this year which I could find, which are documented on agfabasf.com. Those are the SMAT SK, SHX, and SD. Now, I don't know the hierarchy, but on agfabasf, the SD is the one which is lowest in the list, because it lists them from top to bottom, and the SK appears first and the SD appears last, and usually that means that the SD is probably the best or the top of the line in terms of Type 1, but I don't know for sure. So I will say that, okay? The SD could be entry level, it could be mid-range, or it could be top of the line. I have my doubts because of the SHX. Because usually when a company has X at the end of the name, that usually means it's very good, like the Sony HFX or the TDK ARX. Those cassettes are generally very good, as well as, Maxell XL1, XL2. Those cassettes are good, right? But yeah, I don't know where this falls in the SMAT library, I guess. Catalog is the proper name. But anyway, today I'll be taking a look at this cassette, the SMAT SD from 2001. Now I have two versions here, which I both got in a job lot. I don't have an extra version of the 90 or the 120. I just have these. These are the only SMAT cassettes in my collection, and since the 90 has a slight rip on the back, I'm going to be opening the 90, and the 120 will stay wrapped in my collection. And you can see here, these are in Korean. Why? Because these are Korean cassettes. But the thing is that SMAT is not technically the real name of the manufacturer, the people who manufacture these, because SMAT is really just the domestic name of a very, very well-known cassette OEM company, SKC. Now, I know a bunch of you know what SKC is, because it OEMs a lot of cassettes for companies like Fuji, BASF. No, not really BASF. But Fuji is definitely one of them. I've seen some Fuji cassettes from the later period, which were SKC OEMs. And they're a Korean company. And according to this thread on the Tapeheads forum, SKC is actually known as Sunkyung Magnetic, which is the parent company. They're generally called Sunkyung Magnetic, but in terms of OEMs, the company name is SKC. And then in Korea, when they're selling these in their domestic market, they call it SMAT. It kind of reminds me of Fuji and Axia. Axia cassettes are made by Fuji. They're the exact same brand. The only difference is that Axia cassettes are sold within Japan only in the domestic market, whereas Fuji cassettes are sold everywhere else. Same thing with SKC. SMAT cassettes are SKC cassettes in Korea, whereas SKC cassettes or SKC cassettes, which they rebranded or OEM for other companies, are the ones which are sold overseas. So that's a quick explanation of what SMAT is, stuff behind the name of the company. And you can see here that this 90-minute cassette is worth 1,100 Korean won, and this was from 2001, so it grew by like a little bit based on the inflation calculator. But when converted to dollars, it's more or less like $1 or $2 for one. So it's fairly cheap. Whereas the 120 is 1,300 Korean won. So it's just a little bit more expensive. But overall, these two cassettes are quite cheap. So now, I guess we should just take a look at both of them. Although I can't really read a bunch of what's said on here because it's mostly Korean. But I will read what I can. So let's move this 120 out of here. You can see that this one actually has tape from whatever store this was sold in. Yeah, it has a number as well. Telephone number for the store. I wonder if the store is still in business. It's been over 20 years since, since they were selling this. So yeah, maybe it's some kind of grocery chain in Korea. If I have any Korean viewers, please let me know what this is, because I'm really curious as to like, is this store still existing? I don't know, but I'll get rid of the 120. Let's just look at the 90 for this video. All right, so the SMAT SD. There's a nice Oh, I'm so bad with identifying brass instruments. Trombone? Is that a trombone or a trumpet or a French horn? I don't know, but it's one of those brass instruments. There's a nice looking brass instrument at the back, with a with a blue backdrop. It's kind of a gradient from light blue to dark blue. And then there's SD in a very 2000s design, because it's the 3D type of thing with the gradients and the lights and everything. Yeah, SD by SMAT, normal position, general purpose, extra normal bias, 120. Now, this 120 does not mean 120 minutes. It means 120 microseconds EQ. Because of course, it's 70 microseconds for low bias and 120 microseconds for high bias. High bias is 70 microseconds EQ, and then normal bias is 120 microseconds. I don't know why I said low bias there. That was so weird, but yeah. Type 1's more, just keep that in mind. Type 1's 120 microseconds. Type 2's and 4's are 70. Now, I am intrigued by what it says here, extra normal bias. It could mean that this tape is cobalt doped, but we'll see when we open it and when we test it. Now, looking at the back here, it's just a bunch of Korean. So I don't know what a bunch of this means, but I can see this SMAT normal position SD 90, and then it says here 90 minutes 45 minutes times 2 sides. Yeah, and yeah, you can see there it's a clear cassette with the classic SKC 3-dot hubs. Yeah, you can definitely see that this is an SKC cassette. And some Korean, type 1 normal bias 120 microseconds, and you see here Sungkyung Magnetics, skm.co.kr. That is the parent company. That is the one that owns everything. And then a bunch more Korean, even more Korean, Sun Gold, and yeah, barcode. Well, more or less that's the whole cassette. And so now I guess it's a good time to open this. So let me just zoom out a bit so you can see the entire thing. It's gonna be very easy unwrapping, because I just have to pull out the part that was already ripped. So let's do that. Okay, wow. They're still very smooth because, it's relatively young, only 20 years old. And let's get rid of that. Okay, this one doesn't want to budge. Now it does. There you go. And there is the SMAT SD. Now, right off the bat, upon looking at this in the J card, it reminds me a lot of a certain Denon cassette. It's called the Denon C-Do, like it's CD but with an O at the end. Because of course, they're trying to appeal to the younger audiences, so CD, as good as a CD, C-Do. It reminds me a lot of that because it's very, I don't know how to explain it. The design, I guess you could say it's like tacky, kind of. I don't know. I just don't like this kind of design. It just looks so, I don't know what adjective I could use here. Like, it just feels not very nice. Like, it just feels cheap and generic. I guess you could say that. But anyway, let's open this up and let's look at the cassette itself. You know what? Let's look at the J card first. Since I was already talking about it a while ago. It's a very simple J card, except for this glossy finish here, where it says the SMAT SD normal position with the brass instrument again. I still don't know what that is. But yeah, it's all in green because this is the green variant. The SK is red and the SHX is blue. So you have red, blue, and green. Reminds me a lot of trichromes because that's how our eyes see, in red, blue, and green hues, more or less. But anyway, yeah, that's like the infinity stones of SKC. Just a bunch of colors on the things. Kind of like Sony, Sony HF was blue, HFS was green, and then HFES was blue. Then after that, you had the purple UX, and then I think it was yellow UXS. Correct me if I'm wrong here. And then with the Metos, it was like black or something. But anyway, yeah. SMAT SD, normal position. If you look at the spine here, very simple, just SMAT SD and then place to write your mixtape title or whatever you're gonna do. And then at the top here, side A, date, time, noise reduction type. Same with type B, side B rather. Then just a blank space, bunch of lines. skm.co.kr once again. Yeah, Sunkyong Magnetics. And then at the back here, you can see there's like an indexing part here for date, time, source, and noise reduction. Then if you flip it over like this, it's basically the same thing, except it's in black instead of the green, because of course they want to cut costs, so they're using just black ink instead of colored ink. And of course on the back here, just the same, A, B, date, time, noise reduction. And then here there's a black bar that says type 1 normal position. Okay, so that's the end of that J card. Now let's look at the stickers for a bit. A and B in a font that is similar to the SD font, the font on the SD. I will show that really quickly. You see here the SD font. Now this A and B font, it kind of reminds me of the SD, except it's thinner and more condensed, because the SD is quite a bit wider and thicker. So yeah, maybe for the SD, they just got the text from here, they made it wider, and then they made it bold. I don't know, but anyway. A and B in a kind of light gray and dark gray, and then noise reduction on or off. Very interesting. Well, not super interesting, but very simple, and there's nothing on the back compared to something like Maxell ones, where on the back it says like directions on how to best place the stickers and how to take care of your cassettes and all that. But yeah, very simple, because of course the cassette was pretty much dead by then, by the early 2000s. This was just marketed to the people who were still using them, and that was barely anyone back then. But well, I'm happy cassettes still survive today. even though if the market is a bit more a bit less popular than before. Now, let's look at the cassette itself. I'm surprised actually that the screws on here, it has screws. It's not sonically welded. A lot of cassettes, to cut costs, were sonically welded because screws, of course, were made of metal, and screws, metal means more money to have to spend, of course, because sonically welding something is just like a little bit of melting of the plastic, and then that's it, right? Here, yeah, they did use that metal screws for the thing, and there are these textured ridges on the three ends here, as well as on the cassette block. I think that's what it's called, the cassette block. Yeah, these four corners, and then the top, and then this. They're all textured. Then the rest is smooth. Now you can see here, SMAT, Type 1 normal position SD, 90, side A, normal position, just in very wide text, with some diamond symbols on there. And then side B is the exact same, except instead of A, it's B. And yeah, there are no markers on here. There are no textured markers regarding, what side it is. For example, on like TDK cassettes, especially on side A, you would usually have something with one dot or no dots at all. I think it was just one dot. Then on side B, there was a texture with two dots on here. But there's nothing for this SD, the SMAT SD. So I guess now it's time to look at the cassette tape itself. So let's just really quickly wind this with my pen over here. Alright, that's enough. And you can see there that the tape is very brown, very dark brown. So I definitely think that this is cobalt doped. It's pretty it looks fairly cobalt doped. And a lot of cassettes, of course, at this time were cobalt doped. It was a very cheap, or rather a relatively cheap addition to the formulation, and by doing so it improves the sound by quite a bit because you can have better high frequencies and you can record hotter on the cassette. But yeah, that's about it for this SMAT SD cassette. And now, I guess it's about time to test it on my Pioneer TD7 cassette deck. So yeah, let's do that right now. Alright, it's been a while since we've last been here, but welcome back to the Pioneer TD7 cassette deck. And today, we are going to be taking a look at the sound quality of the SMAT SD. So let's turn on the deck just really quickly here. Let us insert the cassette. And while it's doing that auto calibration, I am going to really quickly talk about our track for today. So, the track is called Crushin' by Audionautics. It's from the YouTube audio library. YouTube, I don't really care about the pronunciation. It has a Creative Commons license, which I must cite in the description. So if you want to check out the track, it's there in the description. Yeah, it's about 4 minutes long. Pretty nice. And I already set the levels to peak at around +3, maybe a little bit higher, but there are also a lot of quieter sections in that song, and so it's going to test like both the quiet parts and the louder parts of the cassette in terms of its performance, and we'll see if this really is a super ferric. Alright, so now let us begin recording. Of course, as usual, you'll see the source and the tape text right there in the corner, and yeah, let's begin. Okay, press record now. Start that. Okay, let's begin at the source. And yeah, let's go. So, what do I think about this cassette? Well, the most I can really say about it is that it's normal. It's not bad at all, but it's not exceptional either. It's definitely a good entry level cassette. And, based on the performance a while ago and the price, I guess it's fair to assume that this is probably somewhere in the bottom range of SKC's, or rather SMAT's, 2001 lineup of Type 1 cassettes. If you listened earlier with like headphones or something, it's pretty easy to notice that the high frequencies were not as good in the cassette than in the digital file, but the bass definitely did very well. Also, it could not take that much level. In the louder portions, you can definitely hear a bit of distortion, but in the quieter sections, it is quite good actually. Like in the quieter organ part in the middle, I quite like the sound from that, but of course it's not a one-to-one copy of the digital file. It's definitely bassier, and it has, of course, the hiss and worse high frequency response. So my verdict here is it's good, but record at like +1 maybe, and with noise reduction if you're, into that, if you don't want so much noise in your signal. Yeah, it distorts at +3, so yeah, just record it at lower levels and you will be very good. So yeah, that's about it for this video. I hope you liked today's review of the SMAT SD. I hope to get some more SMAT cassettes in the future, but well, I'm not from Korea, so I don't really have and I don't really have like any Korean friends, so I don't know if I'll be able to find more anytime soon. I just got this in a job lot, the one which I got a long time ago. If you remember my video from several months ago of the Maxell UD1, the one in the blue and black wrapper, which sounded pretty good. Yeah, this was from the exact same job lot as that. So I've had this for a while now, and yeah, that is the SMAT SD. Next week, I'll be taking a closer look at the 2001 Sony HF. If you remember the HF shootout, which I did last year, I did not record the HFs very well because at the time I had no like proper recording setup. But now, since I do have a lot more 2001 Sony HFs, I'll be taking a closer look at those, and I'll be talking a bit about Sony's history as well. So stay tuned for that, and thank you very much for watching. Thank you for 360 subscribers. We're getting closer and closer to 500, and then 1,000. We got this. Yeah. If you want to check out the playlist of my other cassette videos, just check them out right up here in the corner. And I hope you're all having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.